Y'all have the same one? Okay, and so Grayson, it's recording. So if you want to turn off your what's it called, you can. Okay. And I got to get my chins out of it. You can only have 2, not all 8. Okay, so now who is traveling and how are they traveling? Gatsby and Daisy left, but in what car? Gatsby's. Okay, remember they didn't do that one before. And then the other 3 are traveling together, but now they're in Tom's car, which is a blue coupe, okay, or coupe, however you want to say it. It was 7 o'clock when we got into the coupe with him and started for Long Island. Tom talked incessantly, exulting and laughing, but his voice was as remote from Jordan and me as the foreign clamor of the sidewalk or the tumult of the elevated overhead. Human sympathy has its limits, and we were content to let all their tragic arguments fade with the city lights behind. 30. The promise of a decade of loneliness, a thinning list of single men to know, a thinning briefcase of enthusiasm, thinning hair. But there was Jordan beside me, who, unlike Daisy, was too wise to ever carry well-forgotten dreams from age to age. As we passed over the dark bridge, her wan face fell lazily against my coat shoulder, and for the formidable stroke of 30 died away with the reassuring pressure of her hand. So we drove on toward death in the cooling twilight. So he's a little melodramatic about turning 30. You know, it's just kind of like, and again, he said, I got this girl right here. She would never carry, not see somebody and still hold a torch for somebody. And he's saying it as a good thing, but is it really the way Jordan is? It doesn't feel like she has like a lot of depth, right? And I don't think that Daisy has a lot of depth either, but at least she hasn't forgotten what she had with Gatsby. Do you know what I mean? Okay. The young Greek, Michaelis, who ran the office joint beside the ash heaps, was the principal witness at the inquest. He had slept through the heat until after 5, when he strolled over to the garage and found George Wilson sick in his office, really sick, pale as his own pale hair and shaking all over. Remember the last time we saw George, he didn't look good. And the fact that he had found out his wife was cheating on him made him physically sick. Well, it's worse. Michaelis advised him to go to bed, but Wilson refused, saying that he'd miss out on a lot of business if he did. While his neighbor was trying to persuade him, a violent racket broke out overhead. I've got my wife locked up there, explained Wilson calmly. She's going to stay there until the day after tomorrow, and then we're going to move away. How calmly is he saying, yeah, that's my wife. She's locked in the up there, and she's going to stay there because I'm making her leave. Meanwhile, Michaelis is like, okay, like that. You're just telling, okay. And again, Michaelis doesn't know why. Does George know who his wife has been having the affair with? No. Okay. Michaelis was astonished. They had been neighbors for 4 years, and Wilson had never seemed faintly capable of such a statement. Generally, he was one of those worn-out men. When he wasn't working, he sat on a chair in the doorway and stared at the people in the cars that passed along the road. When anyone spoke to him, he invariably laughed in an agreeable, colorless way. He was his wife's man and not his own. What does that mean? She was the boss, basically, right? Like she said the things and whatever she decided went. Is that the way it seems now? No. So Michaelis is like, oh my, like I never would have thought, that. So naturally, Michaelis tried to find out what had happened, but Wilson wouldn't say a word. Instead, he began to throw curious, suspicious glances at his visitor and ask him what he had been doing at certain times on certain days. So in my margin, I wrote something here. What is he trying to figure out? If Michaelis is the one that his wife had an affair with. Okay, so write that in the margin. Like he's guessing because he doesn't know who it is, but he's thinking, you have been my neighbor for 4 years. It would be super easy, if. Just as the latter was getting uneasy, some workmen came past the door bound for his restaurant, and Michaelis took the opportunity to get away, intending to come back later. But he didn't. He supposed he forgot to, that's all. When he came outside again, a little after 7, he was reminded of the conversation because he heard Mrs. Wilson's voice loud and scolding, downstairs in the garage. "Beat me," he heard her cry. "Throw me down and beat me, you dirty little coward." A moment later, she rushed out into the dusk, waving her hands and shouting. Before he could move from his door, the business was over. The death car, as the newspapers called it, didn't stop. It came out of the gathering darkness, wavered tragically for a moment, and then disappeared around the next bend. Michaelis wasn't even sure of its color. He told the first policeman that it was light green. The other car, the one going toward New York, came to a rest 100 yards beyond, and its driver hurried back to where Myrtle Wilson, her life violently extinguished, knelt in the road and mingled her thick, dark blood with the dust. So she ran out. She was screaming at her husband. Somehow she had gotten out from up, he had locked her in up there. She's screaming at him, and then she's waving her arms and running out into it, and a car hit her. Didn't stop, kept going. Well, there was one coming the other way. That person did stop, and they came run back, but it was too late. Myrtle's dead. So Michaelis is like, oh. Michaelis and this man reached her, first, but when they had torn open her shirtwaist, still damp with perspiration, they saw that her left breast was swinging loose like a flap, and there was no need to listen for a heart underneath. The mouth was wide open and ripped at the corners, as though she had choked a little and giving up the tremendous vitality she had stored so long. So it's a little tragic. Thank goodness she probably died right away, because you can tell, it hit her not real good. To have it, blood coming out of your mouth, y'all are pre-med, y'all know that that's internal stuff going on. And then to have her just ripped open, her chest. Okay, so now that happened, but then we're going to go back to where Nick is, okay? We saw that the 3 or 4 automobiles and the crowd when we were still some distance away. "Wreck," said Tom. "That's good. Wilson will have a little business at last." That's awkward. He didn't know. It's bad, right? He's like, "Oh, that's so good. He'll have some business." And then he's like, "Oh, no, he won't, because that's his wife." But he didn't know that at the time. So while we want to blame Tom for every bad thing that happens, this part wasn't his fault. He slowed down, but still without any intention of stopping, until, as we came nearer, the hushed, intent faces of people at the garage door made him automatically put on the brakes. As he gets closer, he realizes, whoa, something isn't quite right. "Well, just take a look," he said doubtfully, "just a look." I became aware now of a hollow wailing sound which issued incessantly from the garage, a sound which, as we got out of the coupe and walked toward the door, resolved itself into the words, "Oh my God," uttered over and over in a gasping moan. "There's some bad trouble here," said Tom excitedly. And again, that excitedly is not the way we would use it. Like excitedly, it's like nervously. I love the way connotations of words have changed. In my other book and that I'm reading, they say it's fantastic, but I guess it can be kind of true. We say fantastic. It wasn't. They're literally talking about a murder in this other book, and they're like, and a multiple murder, but like, there's fantastic. Like, why do they think that's okay? And I'm like, no. Connotative words that we change. Okay, sorry. He reached up on tiptoes and peered over a circle of heads into the garage, which was lit only by a yellow light and a swinging wire basket overhead. Then he made a harsh sound in his throat, and with a violent thrusting movement of his powerful arms, pushed his way through. The circle closed up again with a running murmur of expostulation. It was a minute before I could see anything at all. The new arrivals deranged the line, and Jordan and I were pushed suddenly inside. Myrtle Wilson's body, wrapped in a blanket, and then in another blanket, as though she suffered from a chill in the hot night, lay on a work table by the wall. And Tom, with his back to us, was bending over it, motionless. Next to him stood a motorcycle policeman, taking down names with much sweat and correction in a little book. At first, I couldn't find the source of the high, groaning words that echoed clamorously through the bare garage. Then I saw Wilson, standing on the raised threshold of his office, swaying back and forth and holding on to the doorpost with both hands. Some man was talking to him in a low voice and attempting from time to time to lay a hand on his shoulder. But Wilson neither heard nor saw. His eyes would drop slowly from the swinging light to the laden table by the wall, and then jerk back to the light again. And he gave out an incessantly his high, horrible call. Oh my God. Oh my God. Can y'all imagine? Y'all, he saw it happen. He was she was running from him and she got hit. And so, I mean, he had to see it. So they've moved her body inside the garage, but there's all these people. It's not like today where they would have people back and everything. They're kind of all in there. So Nick and Tom, now they see what it is. Does Jordan know that this is Tom's girlfriend? No, but Nick knows, right? And so he's just kind of like, presently, Tom lifted his head with a jerk and after staring around the garage with gazed eyes, addressed a mumbled, incoherent remark to the policeman. M-A-V, the policeman was saying, oh, no, R, corrected the man. M-A-V-R-O. Listen to me, muttered Tom fiercely. R, said the policeman. O, G, G. He looked up as Tom's broad hand fell sharply on his shoulder. What do you want, fella? What happened? That's what I want to know. Otto hit her. Instantly killed. Instantly killed, repeated Tom, staring. She ran out on the road. Son of a bitch didn't even stop his car. There were 2 cars, said Michaelis. One coming and one going, see? Going where? Asked the policeman keenly. One going each way. Well, his hand rose toward the blankets, but stopped halfway and fell to his side. She ran out there, and the one coming from New York knocked right into her, going 30 or 40 miles an hour. What's the name of this place here? Demanded the officer. Hasn't got a name. A pale, well-dressed Negro stepped near. It was a yellow car, he said. A big yellow car. New. Who was in a yellow car? Gatsby. That's Gatsby's car. So mark that. So somebody did see the car that hit her. Now, that's a realization that the readers are making, but what realization is Tom making? When was the last time before this that George saw that yellow car? When Tom had it. So what is George going to assume? And he even said, I just bought this car. You like it? So Tom has to make sure that George knows, look, I was making that up. Like, I just got here, that kind of thing, because it looks like he'll figure out that who was driving that car. It was Tom. That was the last person I saw. Okay. So I know there's a lot of realizations right here that it's making me very anxious. Did you see the accident? Asked the policeman. No, but the car passed me going down the road, going faster than 40, going 50 or 60. Come here and let us have your name. Look out now. I want to get his name. Some words of his conversation must have reached Wilson, swaying in the office door, for suddenly a new theme found voice among his gasping cries. You don't have to tell me what kind of car it was. I know what kind of car it was. Watching Tom, I saw the wad of muscle back of his shoulder tighten under his coat. He walked quickly over to Wilson and, standing in front of him, seized him firmly by the upper arms. So he's getting it. He's like, no, I saw that car earlier. I know who was driving it. I know who did it. So Tom makes his way to him and he's like, look, you've got to pull yourself together, he said with soothing roughness. Wilson's eyes fell upon Tom. He started up on his tiptoes and then would have collapsed to his knees had Tom not held him upright. Listen, said Tom, shaking him a little. I just got here a minute ago from New York. I was bringing you that coupe that we've been talking about. That yellow car I was driving this afternoon wasn't mine. Do you hear? I haven't seen it all afternoon. Only the Negro and I were near enough to hear what he said, but the policeman caught something in the tone and looked over with truculent eyes. What's all that? He demanded. I'm a friend of his. Tom turned his head but kept his hands firm on Wilson's body. He says he knows the car that did it. It was a yellow car. Some dim impulse moved the policeman to look suspiciously at Tom. And what color is your car? It's a blue car, a coupe. We've just come straight from New York, I said. Someone who had been driving a little behind us confirmed this, and the policeman turned away. All right, so did y'all take pictures of a blue or yellow car? All right. So they are, Tom is setting his alibi, right? He's making sure. And Nick said, we just got here. Nick knew that he wasn't driving the car. Tom made sure he knows who did it. He knows who did it. It was a yellow car. Okay. Not only is he getting himself out of trouble, but who is he getting into trouble? Gatsby. Okay. Win-win for him. If somebody will come here and nope, sorry. Now, if you'll let me have that name correct again. Picking Wilson up like a doll, Tom carried him into the office, set him down in a chair, and came back. If somebody will come here and sit with him, he snapped authoritatively. He watched while two men, standing closest, glanced at each other and went unwillingly into the room. Then Tom shut the door on them and came down a single step, his eyes avoiding the table. As he passed close to me, he whispered, "Let's get out." Self-consciously, with his authoritative arms breaking the way, we pushed through the still gathering crowd, passing a hurried doctor, case in hand, who had been sent for in a wild hope half an hour ago. Tom drove slowly until we were beyond the bend. Then his foot came down hard, and the coupe raced along through the night. In a little while, I heard a low, husky sob and saw that the tears were overflowing down his face. "Damn coward," he whimpered. "He didn't even stop his car." So there's a little bit of sentiment in Tom, right? Exactly. There's that little bit. We weren't sure, right? But now he's crying, and the fact that, she was murdered, but the fact that this guy that is also sleeping with his wife was awful enough to not even stop. Okay, so that's the end of part 16. And then part 17 right here is called A Decision. The Buchanan's house. Oh, sorry, I need to stop and no, I'm going to keep it. And I'll just label this one part 16 and 17. Okay, never mind. We're going to stay recording. Okay. The Buchanan's house suddenly, nope, we'll start over there. The Buchanan's house floated suddenly toward us through the dark, rustling trees. Tom stopped beside the porch and looked up at the second floor, where two windows bloomed with light among the vines. "Daisy's home," he said. As we got out of the car, he glanced at me and frowned slightly. "I ought to have dropped you in West Egg, Nick. There's nothing we can do tonight." A change had come over him, and he spoke gravely and with decision. As we walked across the moonlight gravel to the porch, he disposed of the situation in a few brisk phrases. "I'll telephone for a taxi to take you home. And while you're waiting, you and Jordan better go into the kitchen and have them get you some supper, if you want any." He opened the door. "Come in." So Daisy's already there. Okay, so Gatsby must have dropped her off, and he's just he's pulled himself together, and he's like, "Yeah, we'll just get something to eat. We'll just," he's not crying anymore, right? He can't, I don't know, there's a change in him. Well, it bothers Nick. Okay, there's been, someone has died. They've seen her, and then we're going to go and you're going to call me a taxi? Yeah. Oh, and it's his birthday. "No, thanks, but I'd be glad if you ordered me the taxi. I'll wait outside." Jordan put her hand on my arm. "Won't you come in, Nick?" "No, thanks." I was feeling a little sick, and I wanted to be alone. Highlight that. I would be feeling a little sick, too. Do I want to go in and hang out with my girlfriend or the girl that I've been seeing, make out, like Netflix and chill after somebody is just, you know what I mean? And she's like, "Oh, it's fine. There was somebody," but again, she doesn't know who Myrtle was. Yeah, it was sad somebody died, but let's go celebrate your birthday. And he's just like, "How does that work? You just hit that person and you're just fine with it?" No, who? Wait, isn't it Gatsby? Yeah, but Gatsby's not here. Jordan, this is Jordan. Yeah, we don't know where Gatsby is. How is he fine with it, though? That's another question, too. But we'll see that in a minute. But yeah, so yeah, Jordan, they just saw it, right? And so Jordan, and she's not very sentimental or you know what I mean? And again, she doesn't know that was Tom's girlfriend. She just thinks, "Oh, that was sad, but let's just celebrate your birthday." And Nick's just like, "No, It's only 9:30, she said. I'd be damned if I'd go in. I'd had enough of all of them for one day. And suddenly that included Jordan too. Highlight that line. Nick is just like, these are not the kind of people that are good people. You know what I mean? Like, I had to go through him finding out about the affair. I had to go through this, and then I have to, no. And then where is he back with Gatsby? He's like, I didn't believe him, and now I believe him, and I'm so happy. And then now he's hit somebody and not stopped. So he's just really like doesn't know where he stands with anybody. Okay. She must have seen something in this in my expression, for she turned abruptly away, and then she ran up the porch steps into the house. I sat down for a few minutes with my head in my hands until I heard the phone taken up inside and the butler's voice calling for a taxi. Then I walked slowly down the drive away from the house, intending to go wait by the gate. I hadn't gone 20 yards when I heard my name, and Gatsby stepped from between two bushes in the path. I must have felt pretty weird by that time, because I could think of nothing except for the luminosity of his pink suit under the moon. What are you doing? I inquired. Just standing here, old sport. Somehow that seemed a despicable occupation. For all I knew, he was going to rob the house at any minute. I wouldn't have been surprised to see sinister faces, the faces of Wolfsheim's people behind him in the dark shrubbery. So he's just like, you're awful. You know, all that good hope that I was trying to put in there, that smile that I, was taken in by. You're just like Wolfsheim. You're just like all these other people. Did you see any trouble on the road? He asked after a minute. Yes. He hesitated. Was she killed? Yes. I thought so. I told Daisy I thought so. It's better that the shock should come all at once. She stood it pretty well. He spoke as if Daisy's reaction was the only thing that mattered. So this pisses Nick off even more. You're worried about Daisy's reaction to this? A woman's been killed. You didn't stop. But yeah, you're the shock for Daisy. I got to West Egg by a side road, he went on, and left the car in my garage. I don't think anybody saw us, but of course I can't be sure. I disliked him so much by this time that I didn't find it necessary to tell him he was wrong. He could have said right then, like, no, they know it's a yellow car. They know which way you're headed. But he doesn't. He's just like, you are just trash. Who was the woman? He inquired. Her name was Wilson. Her husband owns the garage. How the devil did it happen? Well, I tried to swing the wheel. He broke off. And suddenly I guessed at the truth. Was Daisy driving? Yes, he said after a moment. But of course, I'll say I was. Underline that. So everybody's assumed it was Gatsby, even Nick. And Gatsby's okay with letting them think that. He's going to take the fall. He's going to take the blame. We don't know. We haven't seen her yet. Remember? She's up. We just said that she's up there. We will see her, but we don't know yet. You see, when we left New York, she was very nervous, and she thought it would steady her to drive. And this woman rushed out at us just as we were passing a car coming the other way. It all happened in a minute, but it seemed to me that she wanted to speak to us. Thought we were somebody she knew. Well, first Daisy turned away from the woman toward the other car, and then she lost her nerve and turned back. The second my hand reached the wheel, I felt the shock. It must have killed her instantly. It ripped her open. Oh, don't tell me, old sport. He winced. Anyway, Daisy stepped on it. I tried to make her stop, but she couldn't. So I pulled on the emergency brake. Then she fell over into my lap and I drove on. She'll be all right tomorrow, he said presently. I'm just going to wait here and see if he tries to bother her about that unpleasantness this afternoon. She's locked herself into her room. And if he tries any brutality, she's going to turn the light out and on again. He won't touch her, I said. He's not thinking about her. I don't trust him, old sport. Okay, so y'all think through this part right here. And the fact that how Chloe is thinking, how is Daisy just okay with this? He's concerned about that Daisy's going to be okay. What is Gatsby still thinking is going to happen? Yeah, they're going to leave together. She's going to leave Tom and everything's going to, and he still has that, in his head. He's going to protect her. They're going to, and so if Tom brings up that stuff, that unpleasantness this afternoon, the extramarital affair, she's going to let me know. And so he's standing out there to protect her from her husband. Nick knows. Does Gatsby know that this was Myrtle, his girlfriend? No. But Nick knows all this stuff. Nick realizes more than Gatsby right now. Tom is not going to hurt Daisy. Tom is not going to, he's going to make sure that Daisy doesn't leave him. That's what, but yet Gatsby's going to stay out there as long as it takes to make sure that she's safe and to make sure that, everything is still on plan. How long are you going to wait? All night if necessary. Anyhow, till they all go to bed. A new point of view occurred to me. Suppose Tom found out that Daisy had been driving. He might think he saw a connection in it. He might think anything. So if he learns that his wife killed his girlfriend, is he going to, find some type of... I looked at the house. There were 2 or 3 bright windows downstairs and the pink glow from Daisy's room on the 2nd floor. You wait here, I said. I'll go see if there's any sign of a commotion. I walked back along... Camille, put it up, baby. I walked back along the border of the lawn, transversed the gravel softly, and tiptoed on the veranda steps. The drawing room curtains were open, and I saw that the room was empty. Crossing the porch where we had just dined that June night 3 months before, I came to a small rectangle of light, which I guessed to be the pantry window. The blind was drawn, but I found a rift at the sill. Daisy and Tom were sitting opposite each other at the kitchen table, with a plate of cold cold fried chicken between them and 2 bottles of ale. He was talking intently across the table at her, and in his earnestness, his hand had fallen upon and covered her own. Once in a while, she looked up at him and nodded in agreement. Does it look like she's scared of him? What Gatsby said? Does it look like she is making plans to, leave him? Is she standing firm? Mark in that paragraph that it doesn't look like it's going to go Gatsby's way. The fact they're sitting at a table together, right? His hand is over top of hers, and she's nodding in agreement. She's not doing this, right? Or I'm going to, like talking and leave, with her hands like I'm leaving. She's doing this. So what could they possibly be coming to an agreement about? You're not going to be with Gatsby, and this is a way that we can figure it out. We can start over. We could say, Gatsby did it. We'll let him take the blame, and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, all of that. Okay. We're going to see how, who Daisy really cares about in the next couple chapters. Okay. They weren't happy, and neither of them had touched their chicken or the ale, and yet they weren't unhappy either. There was an unmistakable air of natural intimacy about the picture, and anybody would have said that they were conspiring together. So mark that as something also not going Gatsby's way. Now, as Nick goes back to Gatsby, does he tell him what he saw? You know what I mean? Like, because again, this is not what Gatsby thinks is happening. Gatsby thinks that she's locked herself in her room. She's away from Tom. They're just going to wait till the morning where it all blows over, and then they're going to leave. But is that what's happening? And Nick sees it, right? Nick sees that it does not look like she is in with the plan anymore. So when he goes back, as I tiptoed from the porch, I heard my taxi feeling its way along the dark road toward the house. Gatsby was waiting where I'd left him in the drive. Is it all quiet up there? He asked anxiously. Yes, it's all quiet. I hesitated. You'd better come home and get some sleep. He shook his head. I want to wait here till Daisy goes to bed. Good night, old sport. He put his hands in his coat pockets and turned back eagerly to the scrutiny of the house, as though my presence marred the sacredness of the vigil. So I walked away and left him standing there in the moonlight, watching over nothing. And that's the end of part 17. So y'all, I named it a decision because there are some decisions that need to be made. Some of them have been made. Some of them we don't know what the final decision is going to be made. But we will get back into it tomorrow. But we're going to stop reading for today. And you guys are going to have the rest of the time, if you need it, to work on your Platonic conception of yourself. Let me stop this recording real quick.